Welcome, curious minds, to the deep dive. Today, we're tackling, one of humanity's really profound and persistent quests. How do we truly understand consciousness beyond just our everyday thoughts?
Yeah.
There's this universal yearning, isn't there, to kind of go beyond the familiar, to tack into something that feels deeper, maybe more expansive.
Yeah, almost like seeing the world through entirely new eyes. It's a really compelling desire, I think.
It is.
We often feel kind of confined, by the constant stream of our own thoughts, our personal identity, and just the endless parade of external events demanding our attention.
Right. But what if there was another mode of consciousness entirely, a way of experiencing reality that's fundamentally distinct from our usual self-focused perception?
And that's exactly our mission for today's deep dive. We're plunging into this really fascinating concept of transpersonal awareness.
Transpersonal awareness, okay.
And this isn't just about finding a moment of calm or, feeling good, though those can certainly be wonderful side effects.
Sure. Yeah.
It's really a state of consciousness that opens up an entirely new way of experiencing reality.
Imagine maybe shifting your perspective through a much wider lens or gaining a higher vantage point.
Exactly.
It sounds like seeing the world and yourself in this profoundly unified way without all the constant filtering of your usual concepts and judgments.
Indeed. At its core, transpersonal awareness can be defined as a form of consciousness that moves beyond the confines of the personal ego.
Okay.
It connects to a sense of universal unity, or what some traditions might call a higher self.
Right.
And like you said, it's fundamentally distinct from our ordinary everyday awareness, which is typically preoccupied with our individual thoughts, our personal identity, and just that relentless flow of external stuff.
So what exactly does this wider lens or higher vantage point actually show us then?
Well, that's what we're going to explore. We'll look at how diverse spiritual traditions, many developed completely independently, have described this very state.
Oh.
Then we'll dive into the surprisingly robust scientific studies. And they really are robust, showing measurable brain changes associated with it, especially in long-term experienced meditators.
The brain science part. Always fascinating.
Definitely. And finally, we'll explore the unique and sometimes unexpected paths people have taken and continue to take to potentially reach this transformative state of being.
It's a journey that really seems to blur the lines between, ancient wisdom and cutting-edge neuroscience.
It really does.
Okay, let's really unpack this idea then. What exactly is transpersonal awareness? Because it sounds a bit abstract, maybe even mystical if you're just hearing it for the first time.
It's a crucial question, absolutely. And it's where we need to lay down a clear foundation. Our sources often refer to it as transconceptual awareness,
Okay.
which I think is a fantastic hint right there.
Transconceptual, beyond concepts.
Exactly. Imagine for a moment experiencing reality without your internal voiceover. No labels, no judgments, just pure awareness. That's a glimpse of transpersonal awareness. It's like hitting the mute button on your inner critic, your inner narrator, and just seeing.
So it's about moving beyond those automatic mental filters, like pure seeing, without the brain immediately jumping in to put a label on everything, without saying, that's a tree, or, oh, that's good, or, that's bad.
Precisely. It's described as a foundational, unified, and immutable background awareness. It exists prior to the formation of concepts and intentions.
Prior to concepts, wow.
Yeah, think of it as pure awareness itself, characterized by what's called non-representational reflexivity.
Okay, that's a bit of a mouthful. Non-representational reflexivity.
It is, isn't it?
Right.
But it simply means the capacity to be aware without engaging in conceptual representation. You're aware, but there's no internal monologue describing what you're aware of. There's no mental image being formed to understand it.
It's just direct. Knowing. Unmediated.
Exactly. Direct, unmediated knowing.
Wow. Okay. That's a huge distinction from my everyday experience. When I think of my own awareness, it's usually just crammed with my to-do list, what I need for dinner, that awkward thing I said yesterday.
Right. We all know that feeling.
My mind is constantly chattering. So it sounds like this state is quiet. Really quiet.
And that's precisely the point our sources emphasize. In our everyday lives, our awareness is typically fragmented. It's filtered constantly by our conditioned thoughts, our self-identification, I am this, I'm not that, and the constant stream of external events. Transpersonal awareness, in contrast, moves beyond this. It's about dissolving that mental clutter, that incessant internal dialogue.
It's not an absence of consciousness, though. It's not just blanking out.
No, not at all. Quite the opposite. It's described as a very lucid awareness, but one that's free from the chatter, the judgments, the internal narratives that usually characterize our waking life.
Okay.
It's like the difference between seeing a beautiful landscape through a really dirty, scratched window.
Yeah.
And then stepping outside to see it with crystal clarity, without any obstructions at all.
That's a great image. So if it's such a profoundly different state, how do we know it's, a real thing? Or is it just some cultural idea specific to one tradition? Is it just something people believe in?
That's where the universality comes in. And it's honestly one of the most compelling aspects of this whole concept. The convergence of descriptions from really disparate spiritual traditions, many of which developed completely independently, is just striking.
So different cultures, different times, describing something very similar.
Exactly. Take Dzogchen from Tibetan Buddhism, for example, or the philosophical teachings of someone like J. Krishnamurti. They use different terminology. They come from vastly different cultural contexts, obviously, but their descriptions of this deep, non-conceptual state are remarkably similar.
That is powerful. It suggests this isn't just a cultural construct then. It's not just a belief system confined to one part of the world or one group of people.
Precisely. It points to a potentially fundamental aspect of human consciousness itself, or maybe a universal experiential potential accessible to all of us. I mean, if different paths lead to such similar descriptions of a state that exists beyond their specific conceptual frameworks, it implies a shared underlying reality or potential accessible through various means.
Right.
And this universality, as the sources emphasize, truly elevates the concept from just a niche spiritual idea to a significant area of inquiry for consciousness studies. It really warrants rigorous interdisciplinary investigation.
It's like discovering that while different cultures might describe blue using different words, the experience of seeing blue is universal.
That's a perfect analogy, yes.
That makes a lot of sense. And speaking of ancient wisdom, let's dig into how some of these Eastern traditions have described these transconceptual states, these glimpses beyond ordinary thought.
Absolutely. We have some truly fascinating examples. Let's start with Dzogchen from Tibetan Buddhism. Within this tradition, there's a central concept called Rigpa.
Rigpa. R-I-G-P-A.
That's right. In Sanskrit, it's vidya. It means something like pristine, pure awareness, or the knowledge of the ground.
Pristine, pure awareness. That sounds very clean. Like awareness without any smudges or distractions, completely unconditioned.
You've hit it perfectly. Rigpa is described as the ultimate primordial state of pure awareness. It's innate, luminous, and self-knowing.
Innate. So it's already there.
Already there. And crucially, it's free from distraction, conceptualization, and duality, meaning that usual subject-object split we experience where there's me looking at that.
Okay.
It's considered the natural state of mind, always present. But here's the kicker. It's usually obscured by what Dzogchen calls ma-rigpa.
Now, Rigpa. Okay, what does that mean for us in practical terms? If Rigpa is always there, what's ma-rigpa doing?
Ma-rigpa translates to ignorance or unawareness, specifically the failure to recognize this fundamental nature. Our sources note that this ma-rigpa directly parallels the concept of separation in A Course in Miracles.
Ah, interesting connection.
Yeah, where we believe we are separate from true reality, from our true self, and from each other. So it's not that Rigpa isn't there, it's just that we're habitually looking away, or more accurately, obscuring it with our conceptual mind.
Like trying to see the sun through thick clouds.
Exactly. The sun is always there, but our perception is limited by the clouds. Ma-rigpa is the clouds.
So how does one even begin to grasp something that doesn't rely on concepts or thoughts? If it's pure awareness, how do you do it? Or is doing the wrong word?
Doing is probably the wrong way to think about the state itself. Rigpa is a state of knowing that does not rely on thoughts or concepts. It's fundamentally non-dual. It perceives reality as a unified whole.
No separation between observer and observed.
None. It simply is. Now, here's the nuance. While it's described as effortless, once recognized and stabilized, our sources are very clear that achieving this recognition and making it stable requires tremendous practice.
Okay, so not effortless to get there.
Definitely not initially. We're talking thousands of hours of dedicated training. It's about diligently removing those obscurations, those clouds, and systematically dismantling habitual mental patterns that have built up over a lifetime.
That sounds anything but effortless in the beginning.
Right. It's like the sustained effort required to learn to ride a bike. It takes work, maybe falls, concentration.
Yeah.
Only to find the act of riding itself, once learned, becomes effortless. Same principle, just on a much deeper mental level.
That sounds incredibly challenging, requiring immense discipline, yet holding the promise of incredible liberation. Okay, shifting gears a bit. We also have J. Krishnamurti's idea of choiceless awareness. What's his take on this non-conceptual state? He was quite a figure.
He really was. Krishnamurti, a renowned Indian philosopher who traveled the world speaking, defined choiceless awareness as an unpremeditated, complete awareness of the present, without preference, effort, or compulsion.
Without preference, effort, or compulsion. That's key.
Absolutely. It's a silent and choiceless observation of what is, completely free from the distortions of judgment or identification. Imagine sitting by a river and simply watching the water flow without labeling it fast, slow, dirty, or clean. Just pure observation.
So not picking and choosing what you're aware of, but just being aware of everything that's present without trying to change it or filter it or react to it based on past conditioning.
Exactly. A core aspect for Krishnamurti is the ending of the self, or the chooser.
The chooser.
Yeah, the part of us that constantly judges, compares, prefers. He posited that the conventional I, or observer, is actually absent in this state. The observer is the observed.
The observer is the observed. That's mind-bending.
It is. He argued that this self-perception, rooted in separation, the idea that I am separate from that, is what leads to confusion and conflict in our lives. When this division ceases, he argued, conflict and the psychological experience of time also end.
He sounds pretty critical of thought itself. For many of us, thought is, well, how we navigate the world. It defines us almost.
He was very critical. Krishnamurti viewed thought as inherently limited, always fragmentary. He saw it as based on incomplete knowledge and as the creator of images that inevitably lead to conflict, both inner and outer.
So for him, the path must involve going beyond thought.
Fundamentally, yes. Transcending thought's limitations was key. But here's where it gets really interesting and perhaps quite controversial for some.
Okay.
Krishnamurti explicitly advised against following any specific doctrine, discipline, teacher, or even traditional meditation techniques.
Against all methods, even meditation.
Yes. He argued that practice, effort, and methods create habit and ultimately prevent authentic, spontaneous awareness. True choicelessness, for him, arises spontaneously, not through effort by the chooser.
Because the effort itself reinforces the chooser, the ego.
Precisely. Any effort to achieve it paradoxically reinforces the very ego you're trying to transcend. It's a catch-22 from his perspective.
That's a radical non-method. It stands in such stark contrast to the Dzogchen idea of tremendous practice needed to remove obscuration.
Absolutely. A very different approach, or non-approach, perhaps.
So, are there other non-dual traditions that echo this pursuit of unity and pure awareness, even if their paths might differ from Krishnamurti's or Dzogchen's?
Oh, absolutely. Many traditions across the globe speak of remarkably similar states. Advaita Vedanta, for example, a major school of Hindu philosophy, talks of nirvikalpa samadhi.
Nirvikalpa samadhi.
Which means a state beyond all mental modifications, no thoughts, no concepts, just pure being.
Wow.
In Zen Buddhism, you have concepts like satori or kinshu, which are often described as sudden, non-conceptual insights into the true nature of reality.
Sudden insights, not necessarily gradual practice.
Can be, yes, though often preceded by practice. And teachers like Nisargadatta Maharaj and Ramana Maharshi, influential figures in the Advaita Vedanta lineage, also spoke extensively of self-realization beyond mental constructs, often through self-inquiry like, who am I?
So it's really a universal quest, just with different maps, different terminologies, and perhaps different approaches to navigate that terrain.
Precisely. Taoism's Wu Wei, often translated as effortless action, is another example. It aims to transcend conceptual limitations and foster a direct apprehension of unity, dissolving the sense of a separate doer. Various Hindu paths like Jnana Yoga focused on self-inquiry, Karma Yoga, selfless action, and Bhakti Yoga, devotion, also seek to transcend conceptual limitations in different ways.
And it's not just Eastern traditions, right? You mentioned others earlier.
No, not at all. Mystical Christianity, with concepts like theoria, a kind of contemplative vision of God, and epiphatic theology, which tries to know God through negation by saying what God is not.
Right, the via negativa.
Exactly. And Kabbalah's Ein Sof, the infinite, unknowable aspect of God, describe direct union with the divine beyond intellectual grasp. Similarly, Sufism, the mystical branch of Islam, with concepts like fana, annihilation of the ego, and tawhid, the oneness of God, also aims for that direct experience of unity.
It's truly a testament to a shared human potential for these profound shifts in consciousness spanning across so many different cultures and times.
It really is.
Okay, we've just explored the what of transpersonal awareness and how ancient traditions have glimpsed it. Now, let's shift to the how. We've seen that different traditions describe this state, but how do people actually get there? We're going to look at some diverse methodologies, starting with one that might surprise you, given its emphasis on intellect. A Course in Miracles, or ASEM.
Yes, AC. It's quite a distinctive approach for sure.
It uses what our sources call intellectual reconditioning. What does that even mean?
Well, ASEM presents a very specific, non-dualistic metaphysics. It asserts that only spirit and perfect oneness, which it calls the realm of knowledge, constitute true reality.
Only spirit and oneness are real.
According to its framework, yes. In this view, the entire dualistic world we perceive everything with separation, form, matter, thinking, concepts, is deemed an illusion that does not really exist. It's characterized as a dream or a projection of our minds.
So the very world we see around us, our everyday reality, is actually a dream, an illusion. That's a pretty radical starting point for any teaching, isn't it?
It truly is. And what's even more nuanced is that ASEM describes this world not just as an illusion, but as a purposive illusion.
Purposive, meaning it has a purpose.
Yes. Its purpose, according to the Course, is to keep the mind, which is seen as the true source of all problems, hidden. It distracts our attention onto external issues, onto the dream figures and events, so we don't look within at the real cause.
So it's a defense mechanism in a way, to avoid facing something deeper.
You could definitely see it that way. A very elaborate defense mechanism constructed by the part of the mind that believes in separation.
And what role does the ego play in constructing or maintaining this illusion, according to ASEM?
The ego is seen as the absolute linchpin. It's the fundamental belief behind the separation, a core self-concept that asserts we are separate, autonomous beings.
Our sense of individuality.
Exactly. But ASEM describes it as a wrong-minded attempt to perceive yourself as you wish to be, rather than as you truly are, which in its view is part of that unified whole. The ego operates through comparisons, judgments, making true equality impossible because it thrives on differences.
It needs separation to exist.
Precisely. ASEM asserts that the ego's entire thought system is ultimately a delusion, without any real power in an ultimate sense. However, and this is key, its effects, like the physical universe, appear terrifyingly real precisely because we believe in them. We give the illusion its seeming power.
In undermining this ego system, I imagine that sounds uncomfortable, maybe even like a threat to one's very sense of self.
Oh, it's depicted as potentially very painful, akin to taking a knife from a baby, as one source puts it, because it challenges the mind's perceived self-preservation mechanism.
But the pain comes from letting go of the illusion, not from the illusion itself.
Exactly. The pain comes from the mind's deep identification with the illusion, not from the illusion itself having inherent power. The knife isn't actually harming us, it's removing something that was never truly serving us in the first place, but felt absolutely essential.
So how does ASEM actually recondition the mind to break free from this delusion of separation? What's the practical mechanism if it's so intellectual?
This is where the intellectual reconditioning part comes in. ASEM is presented as this vast, intricate system, an ocean of wisdom, with breathtaking intellectual mastery, using a highly specialized vocabulary.
Right, it has its own specific language.
It does, and this systematic intellectual engagement is designed to fundamentally change our minds. It helps us recognize that what we perceive isn't objective reality, but an interpretation stemming from hidden, often unconscious beliefs about separation.
Okay.
The goal is to allow for the release of these illusions. The intellectual descriptions provide the conceptual map and the rationale for this profound reconditioning process. It gives the mind a new framework to understand experience.
So it's almost like a rigorous academic course for your mind, but specifically designed to fundamentally shift how you interpret reality, how you see yourself and how you see others, to see past the illusion.
Exactly. And a core practice within ASEM, enabled by this intellectual reframing, is forgiveness. But it's a very specific kind of forgiveness.
Not the conventional kind.
Not at all. In ASEM, forgiveness is a profound shift in perception, where one relinquishes the belief that a sin or attack has even occurred in the first place.
Because in ultimate reality, only oneness exists, so separation and attack are impossible.
Precisely. Within its non-dual framework, separation itself is the only sin, and it never truly happened. Forgiveness, then, is presented as the solution to our separated condition, a psychological tool to convince us of our own innocence and the innocence of others, dismantling all barriers to oneness.
And this practice becomes possible because of the intellectual premise that separation never happened. You can only truly forgive something if you realize it wasn't ultimately real to begin with.
That's the idea. And what about the Holy Spirit that's mentioned throughout the Course? What's its role in this reconditioning?
Good question. The Holy Spirit in ASIM acts as an internal guide, like an interpreter. It bridges the divine, the realm of knowledge, and our separated human mind.
Okay.
It guides the mind into a thought system that reflects reality, essentially repurposing ego-made constructs for awakening. And it does this in a highly individualized manner, guiding each person uniquely on their journey back to awareness of oneness.
So it's personalized guidance using the Course's framework.
Yes. Now, a crucial nuance here, which the sources stress. While ASIM is undeniably intellectually sophisticated, it cannot be read and understood exclusively on an intellectual level.
So the intellect isn't the end goal.
No. This indicates that intellectual reconditioning is a means to a non-intellectual end. It's about dismantling intellectual barriers to open the mind to a deeper, non-conceptual apprehension of reality.
It's a dynamic feedback loop, maybe. Intellectual insight facilitates the practice of forgiveness, and the practice deepens the non-intellectual understanding.
Exactly. It's using the mind to go beyond the mind, using concepts to reach the transconceptual.
Fascinating. So the intellect is actually a gateway rather than the ultimate destination. Okay, that's one incredibly unique path. What about others, specifically the diverse range of meditation practices? How do they function as pathways?
Well, meditation encompasses this vast array of diverse, ancient and contemporary practices. What they all seem to share is the capacity to systematically modulate psychological processes and mental states.
And they've shown proven therapeutic efficacy for things like depression and anxiety, right?
Absolutely. Plus, different styles correlate with distinct neural patterns, which is where it gets really interesting for this scientific inquiry part we'll get to later.
Can you break down some of those styles for us? Because meditation can mean so many things to different people. It's a very broad term.
It is. Our sources broadly categorize them. First, there's focused attention, FA. This is where you concentrate intently on a single object, maybe your breath, a mantra, a candle flame. It often involves deep concentration and breath control, and it's really designed to train the mind to sustain attention and reduce distraction.
Like building mental muscle.
Yeah.
Making the mind less prone to wandering off.
Exactly. Think of it as mental weightlifting. That's what most people probably think of when they hear meditation.
Probably, yeah.
Then there's open monitoring, OM. This is quite different.
How so?
It involves observing thoughts, sensations, and emotions non-judgmentally as they arise, allowing them to pass without getting caught up in them. Vipassana and many mindfulness practices fall into this category.
Okay. So less about focusing on one thing, more about being aware of everything without reacting.
Precisely. The aim here is to experience mental content from a de-reified perspective, which is a fancy way of saying
Seeing thoughts as just thoughts, not reality.
exactly. Seeing them as ongoing phenomena like clouds passing in the sky, rather than fixed, solid realities that define you or demand action. This significantly reduces the mind's habitual tendency to attach to and identify with these thoughts and feelings.
So less about controlling thoughts and more about simply observing them, almost as if you're an impartial witness to your own mind.
Exactly. Another style mentioned is non-referential compassion.
Non-referential, meaning not directed at anyone specific.
Right. It involves cultivating universal loving kindness and compassion without specific objects, not for this person or that situation, but just allowing that feeling to permeate the mind generally.
That sounds lovely, but challenging.
It does. And of course, Drigdzogchen, which we touched on earlier, is considered a highly advanced form aimed at direct discovery and sustained abiding in the mind's natural state, that Wigpa, often described as effortless rest once recognized.
Okay, so what are the shared goals across all these varied meditation approaches, even if their techniques look so different on the surface?
Well, despite their differences, many meditations seem to aim for common ground. First, calm abiding, shamatha.
Okay, settling the mind.
Settling the mind into peace, reducing agitation, creating a stable mental environment. It's like preparing the ground. Then, Insight, Vipassana, which is about cultivating deep understanding of reality's fundamental nature, things like impermanence, non-self, the nature of suffering.
Seeing things as they really are beyond our usual interpretation.
Yes, and a very tangible outcome is emotional regulation, managing emotions effectively. Meditation helps by, for instance, increasing activity in brain areas associated with positive emotions, like the left prefrontal cortex. And decreasing activity in areas linked to negative emotions or fear responses, such as the amygdala. This helps to de-automatize habitual emotional reactions.
So you have more choice in how you respond instead of just reacting automatically.
Exactly. It gives you that crucial space between stimulus and response.
And the ultimate goal for some, I'm guessing, is that non-dual awareness we discussed at the beginning, getting to that unified state.
Precisely. Non-dual awareness, NDA, which involves dissolving the subject-object distinction and recognizing that background awareness that precedes concepts.
Right.
And this ties directly into the concept of de-automatization we just mentioned. Meditation explicitly facilitates cognitive emotional flexibility and the de-automatization of thought and behavior.
Breaking free from autopilot.
Pretty much. It helps individuals mentally decouple automatic cognitive processing, fostering enhanced self-regulation and self-determination. This is crucial for experiencing mental content as ongoing phenomena rather than fixed realities, allowing us to choose our responses rather than react automatically to every single mental impulse. It's like moving from a reactive conditioned state to one of deliberate, conscious engagement with life.
Okay, so we've talked about how these states are described and some of the paths people take, like ACIM and meditation. But for those of us who appreciate some hard data, some scientific underpinning, let's get into the neuroscientific validation. What's actually going on in the brain when someone is in these transpersonal states?
This is where it gets incredibly exciting, I think, where science truly starts to bridge with ancient wisdom, offering some really profound insights. One of the most remarkable discoveries concerns gamma waves.
Gamma waves, okay, refresh my memory. What are those exactly?
Gamma brain waves are the fastest electrical oscillations in the brain. We're talking typically ranging from 30 to over 100 hertz, sometimes even higher.
Super fast.
Super fast. They're associated with advanced cognitive functions, heightened awareness, deep concentration, and they're crucial for what scientists call the binding problem.
The binding problem? What's that? Sounds intriguing.
It's basically how your brain takes all those separate pieces of information, flooding in what you see, what you hear, what you feel, memories associated with it, and instantly knits them together into one coherent, unified perception.
So how we get a single seamless experience of reality instead of just disjointed sensory data.
Exactly. It's that moment when everything suddenly clicks and makes sense, like a sudden aha moment. Normally, these gamma bursts are very brief and localized to specific brain regions doing a specific task.
Okay, so in an ordinary brain, gamma waves are like quick, targeted flashes of insight or integration. But you're saying something very different happens in advanced meditators.
That's the surprising discovery, as the researchers themselves called it. It's truly groundbreaking stuff. Pioneering work by neuroscientists like Richard Davidson at the University of Wisconsin and Antoine Lutz, who work with him, studying long-term Tibetan Buddhist monks, really put this on the map.
I think I remember hearing about those studies. Weren't they quite dramatic?
Hugely dramatic. Davidson famously observed brain signals with the naked eye in a way that we've never seen before, referring to the sheer scale and intensity of these gamma waves in the monks.
Wow. With the naked eye. That's quite a statement from a seasoned neuroscientist. What exactly did they see that was so unprecedented?
They found that these advanced meditators exhibit significantly increased gamma band activity. And this isn't just a slight bump, it's a very high amplitude oscillation. And it's present not just during meditation, but also at baseline.
At baseline, meaning even when they're just sitting there not actively meditating?
Yes. Even when they're not actively meditating, their baseline brain activity shows much higher gamma than control groups. And critically, during certain meditation states, this activity becomes incredibly intense and is sustained for many, many minutes.
Sustained high-frequency brainwaves. That's unusual.
Highly unusual. And it can even be a trait effect, which means it's become a stable, enduring characteristic of their brain, a fundamental shift in their neural functioning, not just something that happens during practice.
So their brains are potentially constantly humming at a higher, more integrated frequency, even when they're just going about their day. That's almost like a built-in superpower, neurologically speaking.
It kind of sounds like it, doesn't it? And crucially, these high-amplitude gamma waves aren't just localized, they are synchronized across large areas of the brain.
Synchronized, meaning different brain regions are firing in unison at this high frequency.
Exactly. Sometimes globally across the cortex and over most of the scalp electrodes. This suggests a highly integrated and coherent brain state, a global coordination of brain activity.
Wow.
This is highly unusual for the brain's typical localized task-specific gamma bursts. It's like the difference between individual instruments playing short, separate notes and the entire orchestra playing in perfect, sustained harmony.
That's a powerful image. And the more they meditated over their lives, the stronger this effect became. Was there a correlation?
Yes, absolutely. The intensity of this gamma activity positively correlates with the meditator's cumulative hours of practice, showing a clear dose-response relationship, more practice, more robust changes.
Okay, so it's trainable.
Highly trainable. And rigorous controls, using things like independent component analysis, confirm that this phenomenon was truly neural in origin, not just muscle tension or eye movement artifacts.
Right, ruling out the noise.
Exactly. And interestingly, it's been associated with various meditation practices, compassion meditation, vipassana, mindfulness, Zen, suggesting a common underlying neural mechanism for achieving these states, regardless of the specific technique used.
So what does this all mean for consciousness itself? If gamma waves are intrinsically linked to information integration, to binding our experience together, to the very fabric of our conscious awareness, what does this unique, widespread, and sustained activity imply about how these individuals are experiencing reality?
It's a profound implication, isn't it? If gamma waves are indeed the brain's symphony of unity, integrating information and forming the fabric of consciousness, then this unique, enduring, and globally synchronized activity implies a profoundly different mode of conscious processing.
A mode that's potentially more integrated, more stable, and vastly more expansive than our ordinary awareness.
That's exactly what it suggests. It strongly supports the idea that meditation functions as a highly sophisticated form of brain training. It actively reorganizes neural networks to support these higher states of consciousness, allowing them to become stable, enduring characteristics, not just fleeting experiences you chase.
That's a huge implication. It really grounds these states in biology. And it brings us to another fascinating idea you touched on. The de-automatization of thought and this integration of conscious and unconscious processes. When we breathe, it can be unconscious, automatic, right? Or we can consciously direct it. Could thinking be similar? Could it become, in a sense, unconscious in these deep transpersonal states?
That's a very insightful parallel, and it aligns beautifully with what the research and the tradition suggest. The hypothesis is precisely that. Just as breathing can be unconscious and automatic, controlled largely by the brainstem, or conscious and attended to by higher brain areas, thinking might similarly operate. In transconceptual awareness, the explicit conscious grip on thinking, that feeling of I am thinking this thought, loosens or disappears entirely.
But the brain is still working. It hasn't just shut down.
No, not at all. The brain continues to process necessary functions automatically beneath the surface, without the conscious mind needing to actively engage in the usual chatter and commentary.
So the brain is still doing its cognitive work, problem solving, navigating the environment, accessing memory, all that. But the conscious awareness isn't caught up in the noisy mental narrative about it. It's freed up into a different mode.
Exactly. Conscious awareness is then freed into a direct, unmediated experience of reality without the constant filtering by thoughts, judgments, and concepts. This helps explain how advanced practitioners can function perfectly well, often with enhanced clarity and responsiveness, without the noisy mental chatter we typically associate with being functional or even conscious.
Their brains might be integrating necessary cognitive work subconsciously, or perhaps just more efficiently, while conscious awareness remains spacious, clear, and undistracted, allowing for that profound sense of clarity and peace they often describe.
Right. And you mentioned integration between conscious and subconscious. That sounds like a really key piece of this puzzle. Why is that inner harmony so vital for transpersonal awareness?
It seems absolutely crucial. The ordinary mind, as many psychological models suggest, often operates as a divided mind.
Divided how?
Where the conscious self struggles, often fruitlessly, to regulate subconscious impulses, things like anger, greed, fear, ingrained habits. This inner conflict creates friction, effort, and noise within us. It keeps awareness trapped in reaction, in thought, in fragmentation.
Like the conscious mind, maybe the prefrontal cortex, constantly trying to suppress or control impulses from the deeper parts of the brain, like the limbic system, the amygdala,
Yeah.
maybe unconscious schemas or beliefs.
Exactly that kind of dynamic. All that inner struggle, that self-talk, that effort to control. It's actually a barrier to accessing this clear, unified state. It keeps us feeling fragmented and often exhausted.
So for transconceptual awareness to emerge, this inner war has to end. There must be harmony, integration.
That seems to be the case. A unification of conscious and subconscious processes. Integration occurs when the conscious mind no longer resists or suppresses these subconscious energies, but rather understands, accepts, and harmonizes with them.
So it's not about getting rid of impulses, but changing our relationship to them.
Precisely. This allows thought to naturally subside into silence without needing to be actively suppressed, and awareness to become effortlessly clear and unified. It's like a team where all the members are finally working in perfect sync, trusting each other, rather than constantly fighting for control.
And is there neuroscientific support for this idea of conscious-subconscious integration? Can we actually see evidence of this harmony in the brain?
There is, and it's quite compelling. Studies looking specifically at non-dual awareness, NDA meditation, for example, show a measurable decrease in the habitual fragmentation of experience at the neural level.
How do they measure that?
One way is by looking at the relationship between different brain networks. Research on experienced Tibetan Buddhist practitioners indicated decreased anti-correlation between the brain's intrinsic network, often called the default mode network, DMN, active during self-referential thought, and the extrinsic network, which is active when we focus on the external environment.
Normally those networks work in opposition, right? When one's up, the other's down.
Typically, yes. They tend to be anti-correlated. Their increased functional connectivity, or reduced anti-correlation, in these meditators suggests that the typical opposition reflects duality and separation. Their increased integration seems to relate to decreased fragmentation, providing a neural signature for states where those internal-external distinctions begin to dissolve.
That makes sense. Less me versus the world in the brain's activity.
Exactly. Additionally, reduced default mode network, DMN, activity itself is consistently observed during many meditation practices and seems to be a trait in long-term practitioners.
And the DMN is strongly linked to
Self-referential thinking, mind wandering, worrying about the past or future. Basically, getting lost in thought about me.
So less DMN activity means less getting caught up in egoic thinking, more present moment awareness.
That's the interpretation. It indicates less conscious conceptualization and more unconstrained present moment inner experience. The brain is literally operating less in its self-preoccupied mode.
It's truly incredible how the brain physically adapts to these practices. Are there actual tangible structural changes that happen in the brain itself? We're talking about neuroplasticity here, right? The brain literally rewiring itself based on experience.
Yes, absolutely. The evidence for structural neuroplasticity is quite strong now. Long-term meditation induces significant changes. Studies consistently show increased cortical thickness and greater gray matter volume in key brain regions.
Which regions are we talking about?
We're talking about the prefrontal cortex, which is critical for meta-awareness, being aware of your own awareness and executive control. Also, the sensory cortices and the insula, which are vital for body awareness and processing internal sensations.
So better connection to your physical experience.
Yes. Also, the hippocampus, which is important for memory consolidation and emotional regulation, and the anterior cingulate cortex, which plays a crucial role in regulating emotions and self-control.
So the brain isn't just functioning differently moment to moment, it's actually changing its physical structure, strengthening the very areas associated with these higher cognitive and emotional capacities. That's like a muscle getting stronger and denser with consistent exercise.
That's an excellent analogy.
Yeah.
And it gets even more fascinating when you look at aging. Remarkably, long-term meditators demonstrate less age-related decline in gray matter volume.
Less decline. They resist brain aging better.
It appears so. In fact, some studies have estimated that their brains, say at 50 years old, can appear structurally years younger than their chronological age compared to non-meditators.
Wow.
This conservation of brain volume may be due, in part, to reduced stress levels, especially in areas like the hippocampus, which is known to be particularly vulnerable to the negative effects of chronic stress.
So meditation isn't just for mental well-being in the moment. It could be a genuine brain anti-aging strategy. That's quite a compelling potential side benefit.
The evidence certainly suggests a protective and optimizing effect over the long term. And beyond gray matter, which is mostly nerve cell bodies, researchers also find higher integrity of white matter in meditators.
White matter being the connections, the wiring.
Exactly. The brain's communication pathways, the myelinated axons that facilitate rapid communication between different brain regions. Higher integrity means more efficient and robust neural communication across the brain.
Okay, so what's the overall implication of all these structural and functional changes we're seeing in the brains of long-term practitioners? What's the big picture here?
The big picture is that these structural and functional adaptations clearly indicate that the brain physically adapts to support these altered states of consciousness, making them more stable and enduring over time. Meditation, in this light, functions as a truly sophisticated form of brain training.
Not just relaxing, but actively training and optimizing the brain.
Precisely. It optimizes neural networks, allowing for potentially a new, enhanced baseline of awareness. It's not just about having a momentary experience. It can literally become a new, more integrated, clear, and potentially compassionate way of being for these individuals, fundamentally changing their baseline experience of reality.
So far, we've talked about A Course in Miracles and various meditation practices as pathways to transpersonal awareness, but what about other psychological approaches? Are there ways beyond these, maybe from Western psychology, that help integrate the mind and lead towards similar insights or states?
Definitely. Psychology, particularly the field that emerged known as transpersonal psychology, which explicitly explores the spiritual and transcendental aspects of human experience, offers several relevant frameworks. We can look at Carl Jung's analytical psychology, Roberto S. Aggioli's psychosynthesis, and even Fritz Perls' Gestalt therapy. While these approaches weren't always explicitly framed in terms of cultivating transconceptual awareness in the same way as, say, Torchen, they certainly share the goal of moving beyond fragmented or habitual mental states and integrating different aspects of the psyche, which seems foundational.
Right, integrating the self seems key. Let's start with Jung. His work is so much about delving into the unconscious, exploring dreams, archetypes. How does his concept of individuation connect with this idea of transpersonal awareness or a unified self?
Carl Jung's analytical psychology really centers on individuation. He defined this as a lifelong process of becoming one's authentic whole self. And the key mechanism is the deep integration of conscious and unconscious elements of the psyche.
Integration again.
Yes. The ultimate goal is psychological wholeness, where the ego, our conscious sense of self, our I, comes to serve the self with a capital S.
The self with a capital S. What did Jung mean by that?
For Jung, the self is the totality of the psyche. It's the true organizing principle, the center, which he believed exists prior to the ego and represents our deepest unified potential, our connection to wholeness.
Yeah.
It's very much akin to the higher self or unified awareness we've been discussing.
So in Jung's model, the ego isn't the enemy to be destroyed, but it's also not the boss. It's more like a necessary manager or a guide working for this higher, deeper aspect of ourselves.
Precisely. That's a great way to put it. Jung had a comprehensive model of the psyche. The ego, conscious mind, the personal unconscious, containing our unique complexes, emotionally charged patterns of thoughts and feelings based on personal experience, and the collective unconscious.
The collective unconscious. That's one of his big ideas.
It is. Containing the universal archetypes, inherited patterns of thought or imagery derived from the universal experiences of humanity. Key archetypes include the persona, which is our social mask, the face we present to the world, and the shadow. The shadow represents the repressed, rejected aspects of ourselves, things like anger, jealousy, greed, maybe aspects we were taught were unacceptable. But crucially, the shadow also contains untapped creative energies and positive potentials that we've disowned.
So integrating the shadow isn't just about facing negativity, but also reclaiming lost potential.
Exactly. Jung believed the shadow is often the most accessible part of the unconscious to begin working with for integration.
How did Jung's methods help people connect with these deeper parts of themselves, the shadow, the self, and achieve this integration, this individuation?
He had several key therapeutic methods. One was dream analysis. He saw dreams as direct, symbolic messages from the unconscious, and analyzing them meticulously could provide invaluable insight into inner conflicts and pathways for growth.
Okay.
Another really powerful tool was active imagination. This isn't just passive daydreaming. It involves actively, consciously engaging with spontaneous inner images and figures that arise, figures which often represent archetypes or complexes.
So you literally dialogue with figures from your imagination?
Yes, or paint them or sculpt them. You interact with them consciously. But this requires a fairly robust ego, Jung stressed. You need a strong conscious standpoint to confront and interact with potentially chaotic or unsettling unconscious material without being overwhelmed or completely identifying with it. That sounds like a fascinating, if potentially intense way to literally dialogue with your inner world, to understand what it's trying to tell you.
It is, and it can be profoundly transformative for integrating dissociated parts of the self. And then there's shadow work more broadly. This involves consciously acknowledging and integrating those repressed, rejected aspects of the anger, the greed, the jealousy we mentioned.
How does acknowledging them help?
By bringing these aspects into awareness without judgment, you begin to understand their root causes, often in past experiences or unmet needs. This significantly reduces the tendency to unconsciously project these unwanted qualities onto other people.
So less blaming others for the things we don't like in ourselves.
Exactly. It's a pathway to greater self-acceptance, psychological wholeness, and reducing inner conflict.
So Jung's approach, as you said, emphasizes strengthening and integrating the ego rather than dissolving it. That sounds quite different from some Eastern traditions we discussed earlier, like Krishnamurti's ending of the self or the Buddha school of non-self.
That's a crucial distinction, and a point our sources consistently highlight. Jung explicitly emphasized strengthening and integrating the ego. He viewed it as an indispensable container for safely engaging with the powerful, sometimes chaotic forces of the unconscious.
A container.
Yes, a necessary structure. He actually cautioned against premature attempts at ego dissolution, especially for Westerners embedded in a culture that strongly emphasizes individuality. He feared it could lead to psychological instability, or what's sometimes called spiritual bypassing, using spiritual ideas or peak experiences to avoid dealing with unresolved psychological issues, like the shadow.
So using spirituality to skip the hard psychological work.
Right. For Jung, the ego is a crucial mediating agent. The goal isn't to kill it, but to have it enter into a dynamic tension and collaborative relationship with the deeper self and the unconscious. This indeed differs significantly from some Eastern aims for ego transcendence or dissolution. He saw the ego as the necessary anchor for navigating the vast ocean of the unconscious safely.
That's a really powerful point about psychological readiness and maybe the importance of cultural context when approaching these profound transformations. Okay, now what about psychosynthesis? How does that approach fit into these pathways toward integration and potentially transpersonal states?
Psychosynthesis, developed by the Italian psychiatrist Roberto Assagioli, is particularly interesting here because it offers an integrative framework that explicitly tries to blend Eastern wisdom about the self with Western psychology's understanding of the unconscious. Assagioli was actually a student of Freud's initially, but broke away to develop his own system.
So deliberately trying to bridge those worlds.
Exactly. He proposed a comprehensive model of the psyche, sometimes visualized as an egg shape. It includes a lower unconscious, housing basic drives, past traumas, primitive urges, a middle unconscious containing our readily accessible mental activities, thoughts, and feelings that we aren't currently aware of but could bring to mind easily, and significantly, a higher unconscious or superconscious.
Superconscious. Okay, that sounds relevant. So this is where higher potentials and spiritual experiences reside in his model.
Exactly. The superconscious is seen as the source of higher intuitions, creativity, altruistic impulses, love, ethical imperatives, peak experiences, and spiritual energies. It's the realm of our highest potential.
And how does the I fit in, our sense of self?
In psychosynthesis, there's the conscious I, or personal self, which is our center of pure awareness and will, the observer. But this I is seen as a reflection of and seeks connection with the transpersonal self, or soul.
Ah, the transpersonal self.
Yes. This is the innermost spiritual core, the true center of our being, connecting us to a unified existence. It's very much in line with the transpersonal awareness we're discussing. The goal of psychosynthesis is to integrate all these levels around this deeper self.
So how does psychosynthesis specifically help you access these higher levels, the superconscious, or integrate them into your everyday life? What are the techniques?
A key technique central to the process is disidentification.
Disidentification, meaning separating from.
Separating your sense of I from the contents of your consciousness. It's rooted in the ancient Eastern practice of neti neti, which means neither this nor that.
Okay.
The practice involves systematically affirming, I have a body, but I am not my body. I have emotions, but I am not my emotions. I have desires, but I am not my desires. I have a mind, but I am not my mind.
So you consciously detach your identity from all the changing phenomena.
Exactly. Until you arrive at the affirmation, I am a center of pure awareness, of pure self-consciousness, a center of will. This practice helps to distinguish the stable, observing I from the transient mental content, leading potentially to a direct experience of the self as independent of the mind's constant fluctuations.
That sounds like it directly addresses the filtering of thoughts and the habitual identification with the ego that we talked about as obscuring pure awareness.
It does, very directly. It allows you to realize you are the awareness that witnesses your thoughts and feelings, not the thoughts and feelings themselves.
And by accessing and integrating material from the higher unconscious, the superconscious, how does that help?
Accessing qualities like universal love, wisdom, or creative inspiration from the superconscious and consciously working to express them transforms behavior. Individuals become more compassionate, more creative, find deeper meaning, and are less controlled by lower unconscious drives like greed or rage. This contributes significantly to the inner harmony and integration needed for these transpersonal states to emerge and stabilize. It's about consciously bringing those higher qualities into daily life and action.
Makes sense, integrating the heights as well as the depths. Okay, and finally, Gestalt therapy. This one often comes up in conversations about being in the moment, presence. How does it contribute to fostering this kind of deeper awareness?
Gestalt therapy, founded primarily by Fritz Perls, along with Laura Perls and Paul Goodman, really emphasizes personal responsibility and awareness of the here and now. Its core aim is to integrate thoughts, feelings, and actions into a coherent whole right now.
Integrating the whole person in the present moment.
Exactly. It focuses on enhancing self-awareness without necessarily doing extensive delving into past traumas analytically, focusing instead on how the past impacts and manifests in the present moment experience.
So less about analyzing why you feel something based on the past and more about fully experiencing what you feel right here, right now.
Precisely. And it uses very direct, often creative, experiential techniques to bring awareness to the forefront. For instance, the famous empty chair or two-chair dialogue.
Right, talking to an empty chair.
Where clients might dialogue with imagined persons, or often with disowned parts of themselves represented by the chair. This helps access deeper emotions, understand internal conflicts, and integrate fragmented aspects of their personality by giving them a voice.
Bringing the internal conflict out into the open.
Yes. There's also a strong focus on body language awareness and exaggeration. Observing nonverbal behaviors, a clenched fist, a tight jaw, and sometimes exaggerating them can bring hidden emotions and their internal meanings right to the surface, making unconscious processes conscious in the moment.
Paying attention to the body's wisdom.
Definitely. And unfinished business is a big concept in Gestalt, right? What does that mean in this context?
Yes, unfinished business refers to incomplete gestalts, unresolved past conflicts, unexpressed emotions, unmet needs that linger and persist in our thoughts and fantasies, draining energy from the present moment and preventing full contact with reality now.
So these hang-ups from the past keep us from being fully present.
Exactly. Gestalt dream work, for example, isn't about interpreting symbols like in Jungian analysis, but about re-experiencing parts of the dream with all senses as if they are happening now. You might become the different characters or objects in the dream to uncover their present moment messages and integrate those fragmented aspects of the self they represent.
Very experiential.
Very. The ultimate aim is encapsulated in the idea that awareness is the present reality. Gestalt promotes self-awareness and empowerment. It helps you recognize your patterns, own your full experience, thoughts, feelings, actions, and make conscious decisions in the present moment instead of operating on autopilot based on past conditioning or unfinished business. And how does that connect back to de-automation and transpersonal awareness?
Well, by heightening present moment awareness and integrating fragmented parts, it helps to mentally decouple automatic cognitive processing, just like meditation aims to do. It allows for a de-reified perspective of mental content, seeing thoughts and feelings as processes happening now, rather than fixed truths. This reduces the mind's habitual intentionality and allows for more direct, unclouded awareness of what is to emerge. It clears the ground, so to speak.
It's incredible how many different paths with such varied methodologies, intellectual, meditative, psychological, experiential, seem to be driving towards a remarkably similar destination. Let's zoom out now and try to look at the bigger picture. The convergences across all these diverse approaches and what their implications might be.
Indeed. It's quite striking. Despite their vast methodological differences, whether it's A Course in Miracles' intense intellectual reconditioning, the rigorous sustained practices of Dzogchen, Krishnamurti's radical non-method, or the psychological integration techniques of Jung, Assagioli, and Pearls, they all seem to aim for remarkably common ultimate states of being.
A shared destination, even if the maps look wildly different and sometimes even contradictory on the surface. What would you say are those fundamental shared goals that keep cropping up?
Well, they all fundamentally aim for the transcendence of duality, moving beyond that ingrained sense of separation, me versus you, subject versus object that defines our ordinary reality.
Way to be on the splits.
Exactly. They seek the undoing of ego or self-identification, shifting from identifying solely with a limited, fragmented self to realizing or experiencing a broader, unified awareness.
Moving beyond the small self.
Right. And ultimately, they all promise, in their own language, freedom from suffering and conflict, achieving inner peace, clarity, and liberation from the mental and emotional turmoil that stems from that mistaken identification with the separate, limited self and the belief in duality.
And what about the similar outcomes people report, regardless of the specific path they take? Are there common experiences?
Yes, consistently. People on these diverse paths often report enhanced awareness and clarity, significantly improved emotional regulation, less reactivity, more compassion, and a profound, often unshakable sense of peace or underlying well-being. But here's where it gets really interesting, connecting back to the science. These diverse paths appear to induce remarkably similar neurobiological changes in the brain.
You mean those sustained gamma waves we talked about, the reduced DMN activity and the actual brain structure changes like increased gray matter? The brain doesn't seem to care how you get there, as long as you get there.
That's exactly what the evidence is starting to suggest. The sustained, widespread gamma synchrony, the reduced default mode network activity, the undeniable evidence of neuroplasticity like increased cortical thickness, gray matter volume, white matter integrity, all point towards common underlying neural mechanisms for achieving these transpersonal states.
Even when the methods are radically different, like ASEM's intellectual focus versus silent meditation or non-practice?
Even then. It's a powerful statement about the brain's incredible adaptability and its inherent potential to support these higher, more integrated forms of consciousness. It's almost like the brain has this latent capacity, this potential state that different practices, different keys, if you will, can unlock, leading to a similar neurological and experiential outcome.
So the brain might have a default setting for these higher states that just needs different ways of being unlocked or accessed. That's wild to consider. But you mentioned earlier there are nuances, some important distinctions between these paths. What are the key differences we should keep in mind so we don't just lump them all together?
Good point. A key divergence, as we noted, is Krishnamurti's explicit rejection of all methods, disciplines, and teachers.
Right, the radical non-method.
He believed that any effort by the chooser, the ego, to achieve a state simply perpetuates the ego's conditioning and prevents authentic, spontaneous awareness. This stands in stark contrast to the structured, often incredibly rigorous and demanding practices found in many meditation traditions.
Even Dzogchen, which describes the state as effortless, still requires tremendous initial effort, as you said, to remove those deep-seated obscurations, the marigpa.
Exactly. So for Krishnamurti, it's a direct, spontaneous insight, a seeing of the truth right now, not something you practice your way into incrementally by following steps or techniques.
So for Krishnamurti, it's about seeing the truth directly, maybe through intense self-observation, rather than building up to it through prescribed practice.
That seems to be his emphasis. Another significant distinction is Jung's emphasis on ego integration versus the common Eastern aim for ego transcendence or dissolution.
Jung strengthening the ego, Eastern paths often aiming beyond it.
Right.
Jung emphasized strengthening and integrating the ego as that indispensable container for safely engaging with chaotic unconscious material. He explicitly cautioned Westerners against premature ego dissolution, fearing psychological instability, or that spiritual bypassing. We talked about using spiritual ideas to avoid necessary psychological work on things like the shadow.
It highlights the importance of psychological readiness and perhaps cultural context for different approaches. What might be appropriate or necessary at one stage or in one cultural framework might not be in another.
Precisely. It also suggests that while the effortless nature described in Dzogchen refers to the experience of the state once attained, which is free from striving, the path to recognize and stabilize this state demands immense discipline and effort to dismantle those habitual mental patterns. It's a journey from conditioned effort to unconditioned ease, but the effort to dismantle the conditioning is very real. It makes me wonder about A Course in Miracles again, specifically in this neurological context. If it doesn't prescribe meditation in the traditional sense, how could its highly intellectual reconditioning possibly induce similar neurobiological changes to what we see in long-term meditators? It's so focused on concepts, words, ideas.
It's a great question, and the sources suggest some plausible neurobiological underpinnings. While ASIM doesn't prescribe traditional sitting meditation, its core practices the constant intellectual reconditioning through studying its dense text, and crucially, the daily practice of its unique form of forgiveness may indeed induce very similar neurobiological changes.
How so? How could reading and rethinking change brainwaves?
Well, the systematic deconstruction of the ego's thought system, the constant challenging of ingrained beliefs about separation, individuality, attack, and defense, this can be seen as a profound form of cognitive restructuring or cognitive reappraisal taken to an extreme level.
Okay, so even though it's primarily intellectual, it's fundamentally aimed at rewiring the brain's operating system, changing deep-seated beliefs and the neural pathways that support them.
That seems to be the implication. This intensive process likely engages neural mechanisms associated with cognitive flexibility, emotional regulation, especially through forgiveness, and the de-automatization of habitual thought patterns. Continuously changing our minds about the nature of the world, consistently perceiving situations through the lens of forgiveness, and actively releasing the belief in separation could stimulate neuroplasticity.
Literally rewiring neural pathways, strengthening new ones that support unity and compassion while weakening old, ingrained, ego-driven ones based on fear and attack.
Plausibly, yes. It's forcing the brain to adopt a radically different interpretive framework, which likely requires forming new synaptic connections and pruning old ones.
And what about that idea of returning to the endless present that Ake-san talks about, where past and future don't really exist? How might that relate to brain activity?
ASIM's goal to return the mind to the endless present, where past guilt and future fear can't be conceived because they are seen as ego-made constructs based on the illusion of time aligns remarkably well with the finding of reduced default mode network, DMN, activity seen in meditators.
The DMN again. Active during self-referential thought, mind wandering, preoccupation with past events, or future planning.
Exactly. So a reduction in DMN activity, potentially achieved through ASIM's systematic mental training aimed at dismantling belief in past and future, would indicate less conscious conceptualization about the self extended in time and more unconstrained present moment experience, mirroring the effects often seen with meditation.
And the oneness aspect.
Yeah.
The core message of non-separation. Could that have a neural correlate too?
Its consistent, relentless emphasis on oneness and sameness and the intellectual dismantling of all perceived differences and hierarchies may foster increased functional connectivity between different brain networks. This could potentially mirror that decreased anti-correlation between the intrinsic, self-focused, and extrinsic, world-focused networks seen in non-dual awareness meditation studies.
Leading to a neurobiological signature for the dissolution of duality. A more unified, integrated brain state reflecting the core teaching.
It's a compelling hypothesis. So in this view, ASIM's extensive intellectual descriptions are not just academic philosophy. They function as a highly sophisticated cognitive intervention, designed ultimately to rewire the mind's fundamental operating system away from duality and towards a non-conceptual apprehension of unified reality. It's using intellect as a precise, perhaps unconventional surgical tool to move beyond the limitations of intellect itself.
Wow. That really ties together the intellectual method with the potential for profound, even biologically measurable transformation. We've covered a truly immense amount of ground today.
We really have. We started by exploring transpersonal awareness as this profound shift beyond our usual egocentric concept-driven reality, understanding it as looking through that much wider lens.
We saw how ancient wisdom traditions like Dzogchen, with its concept of Rigpa, pristine awareness, and J. Krishnamurti's radical idea of choiceless awareness, describe this state from very different angles.
And then we dived into such diverse methodologies, from A Course in Miracles' unique intellectual reconditioning to the many forms of structured meditation practices and even psychological integration approaches like Jungian work, psychosynthesis, and Gestalt therapy.
And the really exciting part, for me at least, was the neuroscientific validation. Seeing how those seemingly abstract spiritual or psychological states correlate with measurable brain changes like that widespread sustained gamma synchrony, the quieting of the default mode network, and the undeniable evidence for neuroplasticity, actual structural changes.
It's a powerful convergence, isn't it? Ancient wisdom and modern science pointing towards similar possibilities.
It really is. The consistent neurobiological correlates emerging across such diverse methodologies. That's the key point. It strongly suggests that these states are not merely culturally contingent beliefs or just fleeting mystical experiences.
But potentially fundamental aspects of human consciousness.
Potentially, yes.
Yeah.
Accessible through various means, perhaps latent potentials within us all. It points towards a universal human capacity for profound shifts in consciousness, supported by our brain's incredible neuroplasticity and its ability to adapt and rewire itself based on intention and practice.
So here's a final provocative thought for you, our listeners, to mull over. If our brains are truly capable of being rewired through deliberate practice, whether that practice is primarily intellectual like ASM, contemplative like meditation, or psychological like integration work, to experience a more unified, compassionate, and less fragmented reality, what does this imply?
What does it imply for our individual lives, for our potential for well-being, for freedom from suffering?
Exactly, and maybe even for our collective future. How might actively cultivating this wider lens of awareness, moving beyond our conditioned mental chatter, our ingrained sense of separation, transform not just our personal well-being, but the very fabric of how we interact with the world and with each other?
Could shifting individual consciousness impact collective behavior?
It makes you question. Are these advanced states, these modes of transpersonal awareness, perhaps the next frontier of human evolution, a potential that's waiting within us collectively to be more fully unlocked?
A truly profound question, and one we certainly encourage you to keep exploring for yourself.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the fascinating world of transpersonal awareness. Until next time, keep digging, keep questioning, and keep exploring the incredible depths of human consciousness.